Okay, I will call to order this meeting of the Arlington ISD Board of Trustees on September 19, 2024, beginning at 5:05 p.m. The first item on tonight's agenda is an academic progress workshop, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Smith.
Good evening, trustees and friends in the district administrative team. Thank you for being here tonight. Please feel free to eat while we're talking. We, coming into the district, I talked to every trustee individually, and one of the things that I heard was that we needed to spend some more time, one, building relationships, and two, diving into some workshop type settings. There are a lot of different workshop type settings that you can see across the state in various school districts. Some will take a day long and go through multiple presentations and have everybody there for a whole day. Sometimes you have a workshop before every regular meeting. We meet twice a month. We have 2 committee meetings a month, and we see each other often. And so this is the 3rd workshop now that we've had. First one was on budget back in June. Second one was on governance just a month ago, and this one on academics. And we're just trying some things out to see how, one, we can continue to build relationships, and 2, have good dialogue about academics in this case. So that's the purpose of being here today. This is not a presentation where Stephen will talk at you the whole time or present multiple data slides. He gave every trustee ahead of time and every member in here the data ahead of time to look at. We're going to have opportunities to discuss, see what we see in the data. We're going to ask board members for your input. This is an input meeting. Next month, we'll be bringing back to you a district improvement plan with your input valued in that district improvement plan for you to consider for adoption coming up. And this is the way to get trustee voice into that process. So please, hopefully enjoy this. This isn't, we're trying something new. So we'll see how it goes, and more than willing to keep tweaking things along the way. But very grateful for Darla for kicking us off back in June for the first workshop and giving it a try, and for Stephen doing this from the academics point now. So Stephen, thank you for doing that.
Welcome. All right. Well, thank you for letting us, like Dr. Smith said, kind of engage in this workshop. You'll notice the setting is a little bit different than we're typically used to, and I just want to say in advance it's set up and designed as a way to like professional learning, so that we can dialogue and gather ideas from one another and then use those ideas to kind of refine our work before we bring actions to you later on in the next couple of weeks. So I thought we would start off by getting some conversation going at our tables, and there is a person, his name is Sidney J. Harris, and he's a famous journalist that passed away in the 80s from Chicago area. He said the purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. And I wanted you to just kind of reflect at your tables for a second on that idea, like how education actually turns for kids mirrors into windows, and the way that our mission actually does that. So at your tables, if you just take 2 or 3 minutes just to talk about if we actually maximize our mission and do it the way we've described in our mission statement, how are we creating windows for kids in terms of their life? Just spend a couple minutes at your table talking about your share.
I like your angle because it talks about the necessity of possibilities.
I see myself, so like hearing you say it was a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
I just think looking and seeing this, and then in AISD, we show so many different social diversities.
Think about 15 more seconds to wrap up your thoughts.
And as they grow, just more confidence. That's what I was
Slightly different. I was thinking, looking in the mirror, I was looking backwards. Looking in the window, I wasn't forward.
That's
So it's funny how each of us had a little bit different take.
What are some of your ideas that you were sharing at your table? We can just popcorn out. What are some ways that executing our mission as Arlington ISD helps generate windows for students? What were some of the ideas that you talked about?
Opportunity,
In what way?
that we let them see what's out there in the world, and that if they can see themselves doing it, we provide the opportunity for them to go on that pathway along with transportation to get there.
Okay, perfect. Somebody else.
Dr. Smith, we were eavesdropping on yours.
Oh, come on now. I was just getting ready to put another bite in my mouth. Each of us had a little bit different take, which was awesome, and a great way to open this up is because when you want dialogue, you want different perspectives. What I shared with the group is I initially thought, when you're looking in a mirror, you're looking backwards. When you're looking through a window, you're looking forward. And so I thought, that's the stuff.
Yeah, and when you think about when you think about the actual mission statement about relevant, innovative, rigorous experiences, how does that generate like a window for kids? What role does relevance and innovation play in helping kids actually do what you just talked about a little bit, about envisioning their future and a way forward?
Being creative with their imaginations.
Yeah, right, because the thing about it is you can teach rote material in a classroom. They can learn like rote algorithms in algebra, but it's the relevance that comes into play when you're help kids think about like, how does this actually apply to my life and the actual goals I have for myself. The reason I want to start there is because today we're going to talk a little about academics, but there is no like one department or one group of people that actually make what we just described happen for kids. Academic services doesn't do it by themselves, OSL doesn't do it by themselves, principals don't do it by themselves. It takes all of us, including all of us in this room, board members, to work together as a unified team to facilitate all the forward motion in the same direction to make those things happen for kids. And so today, as we kind of think about that, we're going to actually try to hit 3 learning objectives in our conversation. The first one's going to be to really reflect as a group, like what were some of the strengths that we saw in our data, and what were some of the clear opportunities for improvement that exist that we want to reflect on. We're also going to review some of the big ideas that came out of the root cause analysis and potentially some next steps that the team is thinking about. And then finally, we're going to try to align on what the draft performance objectives will be that we want to present to the board for consideration at the next board meeting, and also the reporting calendar, the cadence at which will bring you progress reports throughout the year about how we're doing. Any questions or thoughts about what we're going to do in the next 45 minutes? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an activity, and I provide you some materials, and you can either use them, or if it gets clunky because you have plates on your table, that's fine too. But there's markers and then there's some chart paper. And what I would like to invite you to do is, at the table, you had an opportunity to look at data right before our meeting, and then we also provide you copies of what you had at your table too. What are some of the glows? Meaning the things that are actually going well, or the wins that happened in the last school year, and where is there clear opportunities for improvement? And you can use the chart paper as even a T-chart. Here's where we say the good parts are, here's the things we think people should concentrate on or think about. And as you go through that conversation, I'm going to give you about 10, 15 minutes to have it, I'd like to invite you to consider the 4 questions that we proposed during the pre-work, which was, what are the changes that have been in performance over time? In the data that was provided, you can see longitudinally how the data kind of changed over the years. What are some strengths and weaknesses? Are there any differences that you noticed by subject and grade level? Like, are there some grade levels that actually did okay in reading and did better, and other grade levels that didn't do as well? And what are some of the potential focus areas that we should concentrate in? When it comes to this last bullet, the one caveat I'd like to just invite the table to think about is, We're talking specifically today about the district improvement plan. So it's 24-25 school year. There may be some things that we put in there that build foundation for our actions we'll do in future years, but what we're really talking about is what should we focus on during this school year so that we can see whether we may move the needle by the time we get to June. Okay? All right, let's set your tables. I'll check in about 10 minutes, and you can just have a recorder record your ideas, and then we're going to share out. Yes.
Laid out of the way.
But statewide, leaders, anyone else.
You can't read my hand. According to my wife.
Teachers are trying to move social curricular materials because they've got to go to certain absorb it, build a foundation.
That's probably true.
I'm not faulting either, but it's just like, this is, you got to do all these chapters, you got to be ready for this test, and this test, and this test. These kids are back there. I don't understand what you're talking about in that last chapter, and they never get to that. And I don't know what the answer is other than less testing, but I feel like teachers.
I'll start and close at the beginning. For me, it's to take a look at the baseline data on the circle test, pre-K. Sorry, I'm afraid right there for a second, our pre-K assessment. I think you can see there involved in our pre-K program, outperforming sets.
Because they can math, they can distance.
Absolutely, yes. Does that carry over into district? Because that kindergarten data is pretty good too, right? And it makes me wonder.
Everything's geared to look good on the test. I think.
That's right. So there's whether it is growing and you're going to see that next year in particular areas.
So I was kind of yesterday in the Senate hearing from Dallas districts that and are seeing even greater gains than what we have. So yes, it's true. I mean, that is a growth. We've got to take advantage of that wonderful opportunity that is evidence-based way to set students up for success long term. The data is clear.
You're 22?
That makes sense. This year too, so.
Was it?
It was, yeah.
22-23. So they're 23-24 and this being 20.
So this will be the third year, so it will be kids going into first grade.
So I have 2 years left.
Second grade it
And
gets.
did it expand last year?
So I don't know what it is about pre-K that are.
I thought it was less last year than the first year. I thought the first year was more, second year was a little less, and I thought this year was right about the same.
And it's like they hit a slot.
But I had
Maybe an important goal for us is to expand.
And I think article saw that.
Yeah, but one of the things we can look at is the percentage of pre-K students versus registered percentage. And that's what we're to make sure that absolutely those should be about the same, right? That we retain the retention rate. Yeah, are we doing a good job at but also, that cohort that was
They're on an upward trajectory.
324 in April district. What's the differential in the size of closing that gap? So we want those kindergartners to we want to be nice, we want to get them earlier, get them on the right track. Are we doing a good job at that? Whatever KPIs we're teaching right now,
Exactly.
the ratios.
It's gonna be outstanding.
Guys, make sure that what our potential enrollment to be is.
First and second. It's mostly we wanted to say it. Biggest growth.
And I think that may be one of the reasons why.
But not nearly what we had
Teacher burnout.
Just because we could find a civilian. So very
the gap is wide. Goals versus.
Kindergarten's very well.
You're talking about
The glide paths in they're above. That's a big. That's right.
That would be exciting to get spring day for BLI. See if they're for that pre-K experience to continue to first grade.
Yeah, I mean, that difference was 6.
One more time, sorry.
6
And it goes, you know,
last year.
we have an actual set in 2024. And then it dips for the 2025.
So this is the interesting thing. So you're probably wondering, like, why are you setting the goal that's lower than they achieved the year before? And it's because the way that we'll get to this question at the end. It's because when the board adopted those earlier goals, we went from 75 to 77, but the cohort last year did better than next year's target. So then the question is, do you adjust that goal? And if you don't adjust the goal, what it will do is it will be that the next one that we group, we would be like, basically what we're saying is these kids when they go to kindergarten, the kindergarten is 70. So we know that people not so there's a lack of part of it is because of their achievement, and also part of it is because there's a very we know starting group the test. That's why you see it.
Putting accountability.
No, this is just our student
Performance average.
But I think if they've done better, I think we need to move the goal up. We should settle for anything less.
Had a slated yeah, generally you're right. A little flat, except for math.
But it's approaches from above.
Oh.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, everything in approaches.
So really,
Science.
okay, so science would be put first.
Yeah, big time. That surprised me. Yes, it was. Yeah, especially around different masters.
About 4 more minutes and we're going to share out.
And that's always been the strategy since both my kids were. So it's always got the strategy.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, because they had to do intervention. There was
Our data reflects that.
there was not the intervention time that we have now. Yeah, my daughter was here, so it would go weeks, sometimes without yeah, I knew that we wanted to go through that, given how, they're challenging.
Whereas the other stars are isolated that year. Yeah, so the science has 3 years of 3 years. But I didn't, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about.
And they probably don't do as much preparation.
Everything all the time, but only science certain things, you know what I mean? So I think it's kind of biology,
Well, they also embed
right. But I think that's a good one for us to wrestle with a little bit. Is there a way for us to science?
Okay, just give you about 30 more seconds to wrap up your ideas.
It's time as well, so it's not easy. We definitely call them for science too.
Okay, I acknowledge the pace at which we're going, and part of it's just because time, because you actually have a board meeting that you're going to be conducting. So if I'm moving you along, please know that we're not trying to cut you off, it's just trying to make sure that you get all your duties in this evening. But so what we're going to do is we're going to do basically a whip around. And we're going to pick one person at your table that's going to be sharing out. And what you're going to do is someone's on your table is going to hold your poster up so the world can see it, meaning this world in the room. And then the other person's going to just go over what are your blows and what are your grows. This is the important part, others it's going to get really long. You don't want to be repetitive. So if someone mentions something that they already listed as a glow and you also listed it as a glow, when it comes to you, don't talk about it, just go to the thing that hasn't been spoken of. If you get to the last table and all your stuff's been mentioned, we're just going to high five you and keep moving, okay? We're going to go kind of quickly, so you're only going to have about a minute at your table. So what we don't really want is for you to go into a long explanation over it. You're just going to try to hit the points so that everyone can hear what your thoughts were, okay? And we're going to start with this group.
You know it's true.
All
right, so here's a 1-minute rundown. Pre-K and kinder reading performed over the goals that were set, as well as pre-K and kinder math. CCMRs continue to increase. Universal pre-K and K is paying off. English 2 scores improved, attendance went up, yet the goal is missed.
Okay, hold on real quick. You're following directions.
There's no doubt.
So really quickly, when you talk specifically about universal pre-K, K is paying off, can you speak to that briefly? Only because I noticed it in multiple tables, and we might as well just put it on the table. What do you notice?
Well, I think Darla mentioned that the scores kind of going over the gross tapered off in first and second a little bit, and we were curious about that because pre-K, kinder, and math and reading, we performed over the goals, so we have a feeling that the root cause of that is because we're doing a universal pre-K and getting more kids connected at an earlier age.
Okay, so there is a benefit to kids attending pre-K when it's showing up in pre and kinder scores. Okay,
Yes.
And then your growths?
Those two were first and second grade M-Class and NWA math testing when we did our targets. And then ninth grade English 1 and algebra 1, that's kind of where we stopped.
Okay, so first and second grade, we're not really sustaining the momentum that started in kindergarten, either reading or math, and then you just mentioned you still have some room in algebra 1 and English 1. Okay, we're gonna swing over to Claudia, your group. And as you're going, check off if you hear your thing so you don't have to repeat it. Okay.
So we checked off the ones that we had in common. So for GLOWs, we also had 4th and 6th grade growth in reading.
Okay.
Increase in biology in the approaches. And then increase in approaches in history. And then in Algebra 1 end of year math screener, we had less than 20% of students. So we couldn't really see the number, but it was like maybe 13-14%. Like if they did not underperforming,
right.
So the majority of our students.
So this GLOW is an interesting one because even though as a trend as the district reading scores went down, there were a couple of grade levels where it didn't, right? Okay, go ahead.
Our growth we were below most of the district goals in most content.
Right.
And so we saw that trend. ECR, 44% of 3rd through 8th students earned 0 points, and that's the extended constructive responsive writing, which was introduced in the 2023 STAR redesign. And most of our students earned 0 points because they were off topic. So some of the students wrote, like what Dr. Warts was stressing, wrote beautiful compositions, but if they were off topic, they automatically earned a 0. And we have Sarah McMurrow here, who's an expert in that. And then we were just finalizing this last one for the HB3 performance. 1st grade and 2nd grade did not meet their goal in reading, and then 1st grade and 2nd grade also did not meet their goal.
So it's the same growth
that's
they
the
had
same
up here.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, and I think the extended constructive response is an important thing to remember because for those of you that are new to it, they embed the writing in the reading test now. So if you're getting 0s, you're losing points, which is going to impact your outcome in the reading test. And it used to be they were separate. They'd be writing test and reading test. Low scores in writing equal reduced scores in reading now. Okay, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Smith's table.
I get to be the holder.
All right, so 5th and 8th grade science dropped across the performance levels. And then 5th through 8th grade math, we just had a general concern because those it just kind of after 4th grade math plateau and then it just dropped.
And we're going to talk about this in a minute too. It's interesting. The whole math problem is being discussed at the state level right now. It's a conversation at SBOU last week. Even if you look at NAEP results across the nation, 13-year-olds math scores dropped 9% in the last round. So it's a problem that everyone's kind of chatting about. All right, we're going to go to your table, Ms. Brooklyn. I don't know who's talking, but okay, go ahead.
We only have, I think we have checked off just about everything. The only thing that we haven't is in our growth. We discovered that in K through 2nd, data analysis and money are the areas where we are the lowest, which probably indicates why we have
In the
problem.
skills, okay. Perfect.
Everything else is.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Sarah.
And Miss Herrera Dr. Herrera was my principal. Okay, most of our GLOWs were addressed already. In general, we were just proud that the post-COVID bounce back was really sharp that next year. So we're proud of our students and staff for that. I can't remember if anyone already said that. And then 3rd grade, reading language arts, that has the sharpest decline over the past couple of years. And we noticed that was also to start redesigning time. And so that kind of relates to the K-2 in-class data that we talked about. We know that anemic awareness is one of our lowest areas, and we were talking about the possible implications on third grade readiness and how they connect.
Right, perfect. And Mr. Severe.
So they took, I think we, everything got.
Oh, we got high five.
Everybody cheered.
Okay. So when you're looking at data, especially all the data that's actually available around achievement, when you get really granular, there are actually a lot of things to work on all at once. You would want to do that as a system. You want to fix everything. But the big question you have to ask yourself is really around this concept of strategy, which is like, what are the critical factors of the situation? And then how do you choose to connect with the right actions in order to win? Meaning, like, when you think about the challenges of the growth that you just talked about, how do we understand like what's actually driving those problems, and then make sure that we're selecting strategies that are going to address the root of those so that we're actually showing growth? So this is a question that the team has been kind of stewing on over the last several months as we've worked on it, and I want to walk you through what our process has been around root cause analysis and then what the general findings were. So this is just a big idea, and when we talk about symptoms, what we're talking about is like, what is actually the thing that you're seeing? So you're looking at symptoms right now, all this data. And the question we're asking ourselves is like, what are the problems that are actually happening in the classroom that's causing us to see those kinds of symptoms? And what's the root of those things? Meaning, like, if this problem keeps persisting, what's causing that to happen? And when we frame that, we really frame it around this concept that Richard Elmore talks about. He's a professor at Harvard University. He talks about the instructional task. And what he basically says is when you want to move achievement in the classroom, you have to move the instructional core, which consists of three main parts. One is the curriculum, meaning like the rigor of the content that kids are engaged in. The teachers is they're accessing that content, meaning do they have the pedagogical skill set to actually translate that into a learning experience for kids? And then for students, it's are students actually engaged in? Do they have access to those two things? Students can be highly engaged in the classroom, for example, but if they're engaged in rote tasks or rote things, it's not going to move the needle. So all of these things have to be considered when you're actually moving the needle. So one of the things we asked ourselves when we were doing root cause analysis is, when you get down to an actual root, what is the actual problem? Like, which of the parts or the combination of those things have to be addressed in order to move the needle for kids? So this is the process we went through. The first thing we did is we said, what do we believe are the problems that are being generated that we know that we can see? And we did an experiment, we did an activity called the Arrows of Influence, where we took the problem and we listed out all the problems, and we started to draw lines to see which of those problems have the most influence on the outcomes we're experiencing, because not all things are created equally. And once we identified the top two problem areas, we went through a 5 why analysis, where we took that problem and we defined it, and then we said, why is that happening? Why is that happening? Why is that happening? Now, what you probably know if you've been through this experience before is sometimes you'll actually, in education, get to a why that you actually have no control over at all. So like some of you might always get down and making up something, and you'll get down to like legislation. Well, what you do for us is we go down as far as we go to the bottom, and when we get to something that we don't have control over, we go up to the next layer that we do. And then once we landed on our 5 whys, we started thinking about what's the potential solution that addresses that root cause, with the idea that if we can address the root cause, the problem gets better, and the symptoms then will be better results. That's the thinking that we went through. Here are the general, here's some pictures of everyone doing this. We spent over 8 hours. We're actually on hour 9 going through this, but this is a bunch of team members that worked on it. It included principals, several members in and out of the organization that participated. And these are the general findings that we found in terms of the data that's really relevant. One is that there is a need for more proficiency in the classroom with teaching the writing process, using iterative feedback tools with students, and also integrating sheltered instruction and what we call CBLI, or context-based strategies in the classroom, in both elementary and secondary. So one of the things that you saw us talk a lot about was, the writing, extended responses. Well, it's impacting our students' outcomes because there's a problem with teaching either the writing process or leveraging feedback tools in the classroom. Some of the other things we talked about was the transition of moving to the science of teaching reading from what we've typically done in the past, which is balanced literacy. All of our teachers have been trained, but we've recognized that there's a knowing doing gap that we have to address in the classroom. It's kind of like what you were actually talking about, which is, for example, in screener data, very specific skills that kids have to learn. How do kids have access to instruction that actually directly and explicitly teaches those things? Some of the other areas were supporting PLCs and Tier 1 planning. When I say Tier 1, we're talking about first teach, the first time kids are learning it. That leverages in mathematics, concrete representational and abstract concepts. So in mathematics, a lot of times what we notice is they're teaching math, but they're not necessarily using concrete ways of teaching math, so kids can deeply understand what the concept is that's happening. And then also using data to really drive instruction, meaning there are skills that are coming out in our math data, and how do we help teachers take that information and translate that into practice in the classroom in terms of strategy. This one is related to helping students improve their English acquisition. In our data, our reading eventually gets better once you hit STAR, our listening and our speaking are lacking still. And then over here, when it comes to science, there's a couple of things. In elementary grades, it's making sure that time is being really committed to giving instruction in science, and then also ensuring that our students are engaged in experiences and learning, and supporting that with professional learning, so that they're really doing tasks that are aligned to the new science TEKs that are out there. So, for example, if you were to look at the science exam, a lot of the questions kids are asked to do to respond to refer to like models. Kids have to be engaged in creating and analyzing those models in the classroom. They can't just be reading about science, they have to be doing it. And then last, this is really connected to CCMR. We have really a lot of success in CCMR, but we have a lot of success in College Bridge. What we've talked about is we really want to see more of our points coming from places like qualifying scores for advanced placement, or more kids qualifying for TSIA. For those of you that don't know what TSIA is, it's an assessment that kids can take that allow them to go and take dual credit classes and not have to take remedial classes before they do that.
Stephen, will you explain College Bridge real quick as well?
Oh yeah. So College Bridge is basically a solution for college readiness that TEA, I think, is the one that actually rolled it out. But it's a course that kids can take. Whereas if you pass the College Bridge course, you're considered ready to take college level courses, and so they give you a CCMR point. And we've actually, it's a great strategy. It's now only eligible for seniors. It's not eligible for kids that are younger. So, but it's for students who are still struggling to get college readiness points, so to speak. It gives them an opportunity to kind of, for us to directly instruct them and help them build that skill set in the classroom. We do it at the high school level, but because they've changed the rules to seniors only, we also want to make sure that we have systems in place that are really tightly watching kids as they're progressing through their high school years. So these are our findings. What I wanted to do is just give you a minute at your table to kind of reflect on that, and we wanted you to think about this. We recognize that you have board priorities that you're all working through right now. The plan, of course, as a school system, is we're going to make sure that we integrate those priorities into these things so that our findings and your board priorities are aligned, so we're accomplishing the things that you want. What we really would like to know from the group at the tables, and give you a few minutes to talk about it, is, are there anything that we're potentially missing? When you looked at the data in your pre-work, when you had your conversations, these were the initial findings that we had when we went through our root cause analysis. What are some things that maybe we need to be thinking about that we're missing, that you saw, that you want to bring to our attention? So I'm going to give you some time at your tables. We'll give you 5 or 6 minutes just to talk. What are some things that are missing? This is primarily we'd like to hear from board members. If there are things that you think that we need to be thinking about that we may not have talked about, we'd love for you to elevate it into the room.
Do we have that handout now?
We don't, but I can get it to you.
Yeah, we'll forward it to you.
Yeah.
So, Mike, we're just
Based on their reading, it's going to affect the writing.
accountability is where
Make sure that our students can read the passage and write it. And that will be something different for them. Maybe they haven't experienced. That's something that we'll have to consider working in the experience.
Are there any we identified? Yeah, so low hanging, I mean, I haven't really been so I don't know if that's low hanging fruit going forward, but obviously the writing, because of the What else is there?
Just because you provide a media opportunity doesn't mean the translates to change.
All the way through to when we deliver students and it's not just service.
It's a matter of things that can change. We're talking about what's the low hanging fruit in reading. We're trying to build this codes and support to get it right. To make a list of people.
Pass on this to all their friends, get on some words, that's all it's about. You don't have to have a
I think, you know,
I don't like test wiseness, but part of that's
Well, and then so
a little bit better with the reading.
looking at this.
So now for instance,
Two campuses, that's
and then writing come back to the same issue.
so looking at math, like get some classes. Which one is it? 10 years ago, they were getting distinctions. Demographic distinction. And distinctions changed all that. I know. My point is, they were with the state average, the campuses that were in there, it's changed. It's been really bad. So what are we doing?
It's also like real things that people are really special.
What are we doing there?
Science,
13 schools.
Yes, thank you. Just take that. Part of it too is like science minutes, for example, upper grades are like this now. In primary grades, they're rating this down to like 30 minutes. So then the question is like, how do you actually assess those grades? Not all systems, but how do you make sure that you're not compromising that? And we have science labs, STEM labs to help with some of that, but it's maximized. I don't know that it's consistency across the system to show that that's one of the questions.
Because less testing, we all they're doing a good job. Kids are different now. The way that they learn, certain things. Some of them.
It's not just like, oh, okay, we're going to raise the level of rigor in this class.
About one more minute.
In isolation, they probably read answers some questions. They're writing but both of them together,
Okay. We're gonna go ahead and keep moving. What we'll do is we're gonna go around the room, and if you'll have one spokesperson that will share out what are some things you want the team to make sure they're considering that may have been missing from what we've talked about. And what we'll do is I'm actually gonna give this to you. You might help me. I'll have Claudia be my recorder, and we're gonna try to jot those down. If it doesn't get perfectly on paper, that's fine. What we'll do is the people that are working in the district that are at your tables, they'll write, if you'll make sure that we capture all your ideas so we can look at them as a team. All right, I'm actually gonna start with your table, Sarah.
Okay. One of our strategies was the idea of writing across the content areas, really to ensure that we're writing a little, a lot.
Okay, perfect. Very good. Which would help in reading. It helps all around. Perfect. Okay, Melody, your group, anything missing?
We kind of looked about the reading, they'll do okay, writing, they'll do okay, but when you combine them and they have to write about something they've read, we're seeing a disconnect. So again, maybe more writing across the curriculum, I don't know.
And specifically when we talk about the writing process, and I'll mention how the strategy will be, that has to be, it's not just the writing process itself, it's actually teaching kids how to like take two passages and answer a question where they're analyzing both of those things in an extended way. Which you can do outside of reading like you were talking about in other content areas, but it actually has to happen in reading. A lot of times on STAR though, the passages that they're reading, that they're doing what you're describing, are nonfiction passages that are either science-based or social studies-based, so good. Okay, this table, we'll come back to you, because I know, you guys have it? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, we aren't sure, so we did discuss some things. I don't know if it comes down to being a strategy, but just making sure that we're evaluating the students' readiness to learn, and how do we make sure that these strategies aren't one size fits all? And
differentiated.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's a really important point too. Like one of the questions we've been asking ourselves as a team, even as we designed DIP, the district group plan, was are the foundational concepts even there to build on that point? Because you're right, like there has to be access to readiness at the teacher level with students, even in the classroom, same idea. Okay.
Can I build off that for our table?
Yeah.
And we were talking a little bit about just being able to differentiate according to campus need too. Because in this idea of the instructional core and the interaction between the teacher and student and the content, in some cases, if you have a tenured staff, it might not be the same thing as if you have a brand new staff. And so really diving into the campus level data with the principal and the ED side by side to be able to say, is this a pedagogy issue? Is this a content issue, or is this a student, as you all said, a student readiness issue, and how might we be able to tick off all of that?
Right, because the answer may be different. It's like, that's why all the campuses also engage in root cause analysis, because while this may be system issues, the reason why the issue persists at a school may be different. Yeah.
One of the things we did talk about though was the quality of the task. When you take a look at the data in the STAR redesign, and we know the level of rigor went up on the test itself, and our scores remain flat, that tells us that maybe the level of task in front of the kids needs to increase in rigor as well.
All right, anything else from your table? Those are the two things.
Yes, sir.
Your group?
We talked about the relevance, like how we're making sure that instruction is relevant for our students, so that we are engaged.
Okay. And then, I think you're all over my last one, right? Yeah, last but not least.
We also talked about differentiating
Okay.
professional learning for teachers. And an additional part to that was bringing teacher voice into the development of the curriculum.
Right.
As an additional way to build their pedagogy
Right.
and instructional strategies through that process. Another piece was the vertical alignment and ensuring that there's quality and professional learning that speaks to the vertical alignment, since a lot of our areas of opportunity are systemic.
That's a good observation. Yeah, that's a good observation. Okay, so what we'll do is, of course, we'll take these considerations in as we kind of get ready to, as we're finalizing developing the action plan. We thought we'd just spend a quick second just iterating the importance of context. Now, context matters, and I think we talked about that just a few seconds ago, even when it comes to individual campuses. Where they are in terms of improvement at their schools, what are the root causes to their actual challenges. It also matters at the state level. So I thought we would just spend a second just to kind of talk about the fact that even though Arlington is challenged in some of these areas, there are some common things that are happening everywhere. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that, Matt.
Yeah, I think I want to bring up, Brooklyn showed me a chart that another district had used not too long ago, where it basically showed every few years there's a redesign of a test and an accountability system. So school districts improve, There's a redesign, school districts improve, improve, improve. There's a redesign, school districts, and it's nationwide. It is not just in Texas, and it is not just Arlington ISD. So I think context matters nationwide, in our state, and in our community. And I do think we have community context we need to think of as well. Because I've been driving around the district, getting to know the district in the last 7 months. You can drive 2 streets over and have a very different context in our school district. And I think it's important for us to be able to realize that as well, as the student experience that they come with every day does vary by neighborhood sometimes. And I think we've got to keep that right.
Okay, so looking forward, for the last couple of minutes, we want to spend some time together talking about our goals. So as a board, we're going to be presenting to you our performance objectives. And the board takes action on performance objectives annually. And we wanted to give you some time to kind of reflect on the way they currently are. And the question we want to know at the end of tonight is, what are your thoughts about, do they stay on target the way we've described? Should we make some adjustments? And I just want to point out an example so when you're talking at your tables, you think about it. So last year, we had a 2024 goal in reading at the system level of 73%, and we landed on 70%. Right now, the way the board's 5-year goals are set up, we're supposed to be setting the target at 75%. The reason I say that is the goal was supposed to go from 73 to 75, now it's going from 70 to 75. Here's another example. Math was supposed to be 70 to 74, but we got 64% as our starting point. So now instead of the goal being 70 to 74, it's 64 to 74. The reason I bring that up is not to have any kind of, any kind of persuasion around what we should do. That's really the board's decision. But there should be some awareness about what that looks like at the campus level. Because in order for the system, district-wide, to move 10 points, the gaps at the campus level in terms of their goals get really, really wide too. In many cases, it's going to even be more than 10% because if the 64% that landed, it's not unilateral across the district. Everyone just didn't get 64. This is the sum of that, so to speak, or the average. So when you think about campuses, whatever targets we set at the district level, it cascades down because the math has to add up, how all the campuses' goals have to add up to the district target. And so I just want to put that element in the room because it's a little wonky this year, simply because there's been some ups and downs. This one is a natural progression. That seems normal, right? This is a little up and down, but it's not that drastic. These are the ones where the drasticness gets there.
Steven, quick question. So those goals, the 2025 goals that you have circled there, they were adopted when in Arlington ISD?
Last year is when they were revised,
okay.
And then these are the newest ones.
Okay,
yeah.
so last year we went through a process with trustees to revise these.
We revised some of the goals last year because there was changes in performance, and the question was, when we had that big spike that went up,
yeah.
We were like, well, the goals are, I feel like we should probably adjust the goals because there was such a big spike. And then now it's going down a little bit. So the question to really ask ourselves is, do you adjust goals on an annual basis based on prior performance, or do you just keep the target the same? So does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally, thank you.
I'm going to give you all 5 minutes to talk to your tables, then we're going to ask what your thoughts are, and then we're going to move on to the last part, which is around reporting. Yeah.
Okay.
Because everybody in the state is big group down here, and then we all work. So that's the situation we were in probably last year. I was just asking about the history of adoption.
Despite all that, goes our system
being realistic,
for 10 points.
and not knowing the test we may have. I don't want to say it sometimes it's disappointing teachers or our failures or kids. I think we have to
We've been pretty significant increases. in order to do this.
And I think we were on a trajectory, we knew where we wanted to go, we did here.
And so when we do that with those campuses, we basically say, the district argues, and then whatever the district see it, the delta is between what their school was and the district. It's encouraged.
So we're gonna need to be. That was the law distribution in the classroom.
So looks like most are ready to go, so I'll give you about 1 more minute to wrap up your thoughts and then we're gonna wrap.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that we can just say, hey, you're at 34, you're going to be at 75 this next year, good luck.
Okay. So what are your thoughts? One thing I just want to elevate to the room that Natalie reminded me of too is one of the reasons why the adjustments happened in one of the years was because the STAR redesign impacted outcomes, and so that was part of the answer to the question that you were asking. So, okay. Thoughts, reactions to goals for this year that you want the team to take into consideration as we prepare them for you for the next action item? Yes.
I hate to go backward, but a 5-point and especially a 10-point gain, that is a lot of pressure on teachers and students. I hate to think about moving back, but can we go from 70 or 64 to 74, right? I don't know. We need to move the goalpost down, but that's a lot.
Yeah.
With a really large
Somebody else?
number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any please reaction?
So that's interesting. I understand you're bringing your melody, but I was just telling my table, I hate to move my expectations down ever. Even if it means we don't meet our goal, I would rather aim high because it starts with our core belief that we can do it. You know, and if we don't meet our target, then we make the adjustments. But what makes this hard for me as a trustee, and I can't speak for the whole board, but what makes establishing that number sometimes hard for me as a trustee is I don't have a lot of information around the strategies taken to reach that 74%. And sometimes it's just like, okay, if we don't know anything about the strategy, I'm just making up a number. And I realize that it's kind of rebuilding time for our whole district, and I mean, we'll get there, but that's where I'm at right now.
That's fair. Yeah.
Sarah, it's funny you say that because I think about that too with governance. Like, it's not our lane to know how we're getting places, but I do feel like as a board, maybe all of us would feel better if we have this goal to say, you are not looking for approval of how you're getting there, but at least, you know, we talked about coaches and owners of a team before, but at least if we're the owner of the team and we're showing you this big number, at least as a coach, you're telling us, like, here are the 4 things in each way we are going to grow and get there. And we go, okay, we can keep back and keep trusting you. Sarah, I don't want to lower our expectations. I don't think that sets a good example for our students, our parents, our teachers, or our kids. I think if we are able to say, it's all about presentation too. How do you say it to somebody? Teachers, we believe in you. We are not setting you up for failure. We believe you can accomplish this. However, asterisk, it may not happen in a year, maybe it's a year and a half, but you will get there. We tell our students, you will get there, and we certainly don't tell our families, it's good enough, we're gonna lower, you know, some of those kids aren't gonna. I just feel like anytime you lower expectations, you don't get the desired result either. So I would rather challenge them and us present it that we are willing to wait.
Now, one thing I will just add to your question about strategies, the ones that are being designed are going to address the findings that you saw. And when you actually get when the DIP is finished, like you'll have access to it, you'll see like this is the number we wanted to move and this is the how that's happening. And what will be included there are the things that we're doing this year to move the needle this year, and the things we're doing this year to prep to move the needle next year. So
that's amazing.
That'll be in there, yeah.
That would, I don't know about anybody else as a trustee, but that would make me feel so good to know what is being done together
Yeah,
here.
good to see that, yeah.
We talked a little bit about the same dissonance that we have, but the goal actually, in SMART goal form, actually has to be achievable. Just being honest on that too. And so being able to say 10% yes, but is it really achievable, or are we just setting people on so.
What's the consequence if they don't make it? If we don't hit our goal, is there a punitive? Do we lose any funding? Do we?
That's really a board level situation. Like, the consequence is our A through F accountability rating and how people talk about what we're doing. For me, and you've heard me speak recently talking specifically about this, these don't matter a whole lot to me, just being honest. It's about whether or not a kid's growing and what we do between kindergarten and 12th grade and when they walk out the doors, and making sure we close those gaps, get them ready, and get them ready to go. So for me, we're going to do everything we can to hit these targets and improve, because I don't want to be talked about negatively by the state, but I think there's more, it's a bigger picture overall. But there's nobody that's going to, if we're at 72 instead of 71, or 72 instead of 73, there's nobody that's going to come give us a sticker or, put us in the corner. That's just,
Dr. Wertz, can you speak to the research about improvement in the limits on growth a student can be expected to have in 1 year? Because I think that's relevant to this conversation.
Well, I think you're hitting on an interesting point, right? Because we actually had this conversation earlier today about target setting for students, and some kids will not reach the meets expectation or even the approaches, but they'll make a year's worth of growth. And so you may earn like a growth point because you went from like, one level in below to another level and below, and still not meet your target. But that will still not be reflected in this outcome, right? So like you could potentially have kids that are earning growth points in a system and still not reach the actual target here. In education, typically we look for a year's worth of growth, which is established by usually national benchmarks. So when you think of nationally norm reference assessments like screeners, they're referencing the students in their age bracket developmentally and the content that they're learning or the skills they should acquire, and then they're measured against those points. In education, typically we look for a year's worth of growth. Now, when kids are behind, you try to push for like a year and a half, because if you don't get a little bit more momentum than you normally would, which is where all the tutoring and extra things come in, then you never get to the point. But when you think about teachers, the big idea is you want your kids to move at least a year's worth. Yeah.
Right, but if we're going to set a goal of 74% or keep it there, and they're at 64, what does that translate? Those percentages translate to a year or 2 years worth of growth in 1 year?
It's a really good question. I'll just give you the big idea, and then you can chime in if you want to, Natalie. Is in a system as large as we are, to move 1-2 percentage points is actually pretty significant. Moving 10 points a system this large, it's like you are like, it's crazy. Like it's very, very unexpected. That would not be typically what you would see at a school system that's as large as we are in a year, because we're taking 90,000 tests. So sometimes when people look at our targets, they're like, oh my gosh, you're only going up 2 or 3%. It's because the volume of students that it takes a lot to move that number. So I don't know if that's the question you're asking or not, but it's not. Typically, most people would say, wow, you're going to go 10% in 1 year in a system this large. That usually would not be sound for most people. Yeah. Most people would say that's really right. That's a real stretch goal.
The original model was built with small to some medium effect sizes of intervention. 10% would be medium to large, and the educational research doesn't typically show medium to large effect sizes from strategies. So it would be lofty and probably unachievable, just from the data point of view. Yeah. So not from any other perspective of.
And I would, if I could say real quick, I'm all for setting the bar high. But as Matt mentioned, SMART goals have to be stretched, and you can really stretch them, but in the realm of possibility of achieving, even for those that struggle, but with maybe a low percentage of achieving. But what I was going to say is, with the redesign of STAR, I think we have covered to necessitate reverting back when we raised our goals of reverting back to the original at least.
The one thing I just want to commend our board on this right here is exactly why you have workshops, is a dialogue to talk about what really matters to us and a goal that we're setting. It's not just a number that you adopt, it's actually what really matters to us in that sense. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Now, what I'll say is, we don't, I'm not expecting anybody to land today, so you're gonna probably have further conversations with Matt, and then we'll take our guidance from him, but I wanted to put the conversation in the room because it's an important one. The last thing that we wanted to share with you today, which I'll also gather your feedback, and then you can share your thoughts with Matt, even if it's outside of this meeting, is this is the proposed reporting calendar about when things would come to you as a board to report out on progress. What we're trying to do is balance the reporting out to the board around things that are really, really granular in nature that you can spend time on, and things that are actually predictive of STAR outcomes. So what we're recommending is, of course, the DIP and CIPs will share those. The presentations are specifically the things that we would recommend bringing to the board in a presentation format at a meeting, because these ones specifically have predictive value for outcomes on STAR. The screener data ones, we still want to share them with you, especially since they're related to some House Bill 3. But they're very granular in nature, so our recommendation is to send those into to you as a board report that you can actually read and analyze, and then we would answer questions outside of the presentation meeting. So this is what we're proposing, and we want to get some thoughts and reactions to this, because this will be part of the adoption when we come to a vote next meeting. Any reactions to this? Does it feel okay? Yeah.
A quick question, you got the CIP and DIPs. What about the TIPs? When are those coming?
I have to look, I don't have that on there. It's outside of this section.
And they usually come in your CIPs?
They do. Yeah, I think they do.
So on the 15th?
But the board would have to approve them, so I
Yes.
think it would come at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for board members who don't know what those are targeted improvement plans for campus that are designated in need of improvement, and we have to have an official plan for them to be adopted by the board in order to move that school forward.
And how many campuses will it be this year?
Do you have that number? We'll get it to you. We'll get it to you. Okay, so I'm gonna let you, we'll connect with Dr. Smith, and he can give us some guidance. So this is what's next for us. We're gonna finalize, based on all your feedback, we're gonna finalize our performance objectives and strategies, and the dips and the sips and the tips. Sips and tips are kind of connected to each other. And then what we'll do is we're gonna bring for an action item, the performance objectives for your consideration. That will happen at the next board meeting on October 3rd. I wanna make sure that everyone keeps in mind that all we're bringing for the vote is the actual performance objectives, the finalized plan with all the strategies. The goal is around middle of October when those will be accessible. Okay?
So again, that goes back to the governance lens. The board helps set direction. Here's where we want to be. We help define the strategies to get there, but you will have all of that at the end. So just know that those things are on the way. Okay? And kudos to Stephen, team, our OSL team. I didn't do a good job earlier. I should have made everybody introduce themselves. I realized that some people don't actually know everybody in here. So if we could, just real quickly, we'll start back in the corner with Priscilla and Samantha. And then Dennis is behind the column over there. But if we can just look around the room and introduce ourselves real quickly before we're all done.
So go top, can you shift the yes? Samantha Cross now.
Dennis Lifebon.
And pull with arms.
Christy.
Christy Buell.
Brooklyn Richardson.
Stephanie Lee.
Patty Bustamante.
Oh, is there our turn?
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah McMurrow.
Tamara Gordon.
Jennifer Collins.
Grace Joberser.
Justin Chapman.
Scott Kale.
Leanne Haynes. Alvin Morales.
Michael Field. Shabir Dollar.
Matt Smith.
Barry Fox.
Natalie Lopez.
Oh, me.
TJ Jarka.
Melanie Fowler.
Darn Moss.
Thank you. I didn't realize, and y'all know Steve. Yeah, I didn't realize that everybody might not know each other in here until I realized I heard some people introducing themselves to each other. So this is our academic service. This is some members of our academic services team and our Office of School Leadership team. So these are the people we get together to try and make sure that we're helping our campus improve student learning for everybody. So thank y'all for getting together and doing this.
And will you do me a favor before you, I want to say one thing before you close out. If you'll just leave your pages on the table, we're going to collect them to make sure we capture everyone's ideas. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we will recess at 6:15. Board members will meet in the board chambers for closed session.